All right, so today we're jumping into a 17th century poem that, on the surface, looks pretty traditional, but wow, it packs a seriously radical message. We're talking about a candid, straight-up warning against marriage, written by a woman at a time when that was a hugely defiant thing to do.
Okay, so to really get how rebellious this poem was, you've got to understand the world it came from. We need to step back into the 1600s. And for a woman back then, marriage, it wasn't really a personal choice. Nope. It was what society expected, it was an economic necessity, and for most, it was seen as their one and only destiny. And here's this key idea you have to know about. It's called coverture. Basically, it was a legal doctrine that said once a woman got married, bam, she became what was called a femme covert. And that meant she couldn't own property, she couldn't sign contracts. She basically didn't exist as a separate legal person from her husband. Her entire identity was literally covered by his. So that's the world Katherine Philips was writing in. She had this cool nickname, the Matchless Orinda, and she took the very elegant, very controlled art of poetry and used it to launch this absolutely stunning attack on the whole system. So how exactly does she build her case against marriage? Well, she starts with the quiet, hidden misery of wives. And let me tell you, she does not pull any punches. The poem kicks off with this incredibly blunt statement. She's not saying, oh, bad marriages are tough. No, she's saying marriage itself is the problem. Even if you get the best husband, your job is this endless, exhausting chore of trying to please him. And she makes it sound like it's a basically impossible task. And what's so fascinating here is that Philips lets us in on a secret. This suffering is hidden. The word she uses, dissemble, is so important. It means wives are actively hiding their unhappiness, right? They're putting on a show, a performance of being content, to cover up what's really going on. Right, so the really crucial point she's making is that this isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a whole system that forces women to bury their own feelings. Their faces become these careful masks, and marriage itself? It's just a performance, built on a lie that keeps the institution going, but hollows out the woman on the inside. Okay, so then Philips really turns up the heat. She moves from the psychological pain to the physical and even the spiritual costs of marriage. And she does it by showing this stark contrast with the freedom of being single. And this comparison just lays it all out, doesn't it? It's the core conflict of the poem. What Philips does here is completely redefine what it means to be a single woman. It's not about missing out on something. It's a state of being crowned with content. It's about power and peace. Marriage, on the other hand, is just little ease and worldly crosses. And to really hammer this point home, she uses this amazing rhetorical trick, anaphora. Basically, she creates this powerful rhythmic list. It's like a constant drumbeat, listing all the terrible things you get to avoid by staying single. It's so effective. First up, no blustering husbands. You're free from these loud, aggressive, honestly terrifying guys. That word, blustering, it just paints such a clear picture, doesn't it? A man who's all noise and threats, making the home a place of fear, not a place of love. Next on the list, no pangs of childbirth. And we have to remember, this was the 1600s. Childbirth was incredibly dangerous, often fatal. Philips isn't romanticizing motherhood at all. She's framing it for what it was, an agonizing physical trauma. I mean, the pangs that literally extort tears from you. So powerful. And finally, no children's cries. You get freedom from the constant, draining demands of being a mother. It's amazing how she presents this. A baby's cry isn't a beautiful sign of new life here. It's an offense to your ears. It's something that shatters a woman's peace. But for Philips, these aren't just, everyday complaints. She calls them worldly crosses that distract your prayers. And this is a masterstroke. Think about it. In a super religious society, she frames marriage not just as being unpleasant, but as a roadblock to a woman's spiritual life. It's something that gets in the way of being a good, devout person. So, after laying out all her evidence, almost like a prosecutor in a courtroom, Philips switches gears. She moves from just criticizing the system to a direct call to action. And for her time, this was absolutely revolutionary. She speaks directly to the unmarried woman, she calls her Madam, and gives her an order. Turn apostate. She's telling her to abandon love's levity, its shallowness and silliness, and treat it like it's a false religion you have to escape from. I mean, using the word apostate, that was so shocking back then. An apostate was someone who betrayed their religion. So she's literally equating the choice to not marry with turning your back on God. Philips is saying, look, if you want to be a free woman, you have to be a heretic. You have to be a rebel against the whole sacred social order.
And then she does something brilliant. With this amazing flash of wit, she takes on the #1 scare tactic used to push women into getting married. Yeah, there was this common saying, this old wives' tale, that if you didn't get married, you'd be punished in the afterlife by leading apes in hell. I know, it's weird. But with one single, defiant, logical line, Philips just blows that whole superstition out of the water. She's basically saying, come on, don't fall for the propaganda. She makes being single seem like the smart, rational choice, not some sin that gets you a bizarre punishment. So that brings up a really big question, right? How did Katherine Philips get away with this? How did she circulate such a proto-feminist message without getting totally shut down? Well, the secret is this brilliant contrast between the form of the poem and its content. See, she wrote it in these very traditional, orderly rhyming couplets with a really regular meter. It's like she built a Trojan horse. She used the accepted tools of the male-dominated literary world to sneak her radical ideas right inside the gates. And really, that's the big takeaway here. Because the poem sounds so controlled and logical, her radical argument doesn't come across like an angry rant. Instead, it feels like calm, rational, persuasive advice. By wrapping a revolutionary idea in a very conventional package, Philips created this incredibly powerful and timeless argument for female freedom. And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? Katherine Philips used the acceptable art form of her day, poetry, to stage a rebellion. So it makes you wonder, what are the conventional tools we use today, and how are people using them to challenge our norms? It just goes to show you how powerful art can be when it decides to question authority.